let's talk Apache Airflow 3. Oh boy. My friend Kenton today is joining me, and she's going to tell me all about the latest and greatest features about Apache Airflow 3, how she built this amazing personalized newsletter, and, well, how Airflow is not only an ETL. So let's go ahead and talk to this person here. Hi, Kenton. Hi,
hey, Darko.
Hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Kenton, tell me, tell them, tell us who you are, what do you do, and how's their spaces?
Starting with a controversial question, I see. So I'm Kenton Danis. I lead a developer relations team at Astronomer. I am a Seattle native, so from the beautiful Pacific Northwest, and I'm going to go spaces.
Oh, yes. Always spaces, my friends. Absolutely. Now, you mentioned Astronomer. What is Astronomer? What do you folks do?
Astronomer provides a unified data ops platform. So anything that you need to do to create your data products that your business runs on, that's what Astronomer helps with. And we are a leader in the open source Apache Airflow project.
Okay, now you have to talk to me about that. Apache Airflow. Tell me what Apache Airflow is.
So Apache Airflow is an open source tool for orchestration or workflow management for authoring, scheduling, and monitoring all of your data pipelines. It's been around for a while. It was created in 2014 at Airbnb. It's now a top-level Apache Software Foundation project, and Airflow 3.0 was just released.
We're going to talk about a couple of great releases, well, bits of features that came out with Airflow 3. And I do actually wonder, Airflow, Airbnb, maybe the Airbnb Air and Airbnb is part of Airflow. I don't know. Tell us in the comments if that's correct or not. How did this thing help you build this newsletter application?
Yeah, so Airflow is key to this use case that I built. A newsletter is fairly simple, it seems, but making that, especially the personalization aspect of it based on what a user inputs, is actually quite complex. It requires managing a lot of data, moving through a lot of different systems, and that's what you need Airflow for, to orchestrate all of that.
So let's actually have a look at this thing. I like that. And this seems like an incredibly complex thing, but I promise you it's not. Tell me in broad strokes, what are we looking at here? What is on this architecture diagram?
So we have two main pieces that go into creating the automated personalized newsletter. The first is an ETL pipeline. So that's kind of the bread and butter, gets all of our data into the right format. And then the personalization part, which is a Gen AI workflow that we've implemented with Airflow.
So let's have a look at what this ETL thing does.
Typical workflow is that you start with your ETL. It's like the bread and butter that you need for creating any sort of orchestration use case. You have to first get the raw data, do some transformations on it, and then get it into its final state. So in our case, we have the extract step, which is grabbing quotes from an API. So this is how we add the motivational quotes to our newsletter so that it's motivational, of course.
Okay.
Then we need to do some transformation on those. Data rarely comes in its final state from wherever you're gathering it from. And then our final load step is putting it into the format that we need for the standardized newsletter.
So we're going to look at this thing. And I think this is going to be part of the whole assets dance. And let's go actually look at the demo and see how this all works. So is this the Apache Airflow dashboard?
Yes, this is the Airflow UI, and more specifically, the Airflow 3 UI. It just got a very large refresh for this major version. So you have a much cleaner home page here where you can see everything that's going on in all of your pipeline.
Should be that ETL pipeline because I'm not sure where it is.
This is everything that's going on in our, for instance. So we'll start actually over here on the right where it says asset events. So for our ETL pipeline, in this case, we've implemented this using assets, which is a new feature in Airflow 3. They were built off of data sets, which was an old feature in Airflow 2. You can think of an asset as like a collection of logically related data. So the data that you're pulling from an API or the final newsletter format. Assets are a different way of defining pipelines in Airflow. So as opposed to the task-oriented approach that still exists, but that was also in Airflow 2, where each task kind of does a thing, you can think about the asset-oriented approach as more defining the end state of data that you want.
An asset would be like the end state of the newsletter, or like specific a specific formatting I'll doing, or like is it the whole pipeline, or just
all of the above? So each step is a different asset. Exactly.
Okay.
And so that's what we're seeing here. And so if we hop into one of them, you can see a couple of assets here for our extract and transform steps. So our raw Zen quotes is the extract step that is grabbing data from the API. The selected quotes is the transform step. And you can see they're each, in this case, represented by 2 different boxes here. That's because we have a DAG that is what actually runs or materializes that asset, creates that data set. And then this is the asset with the little database icon that is actually created. These are connected here so that your transform step isn't actually running before the data is available.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you mentioned a DAG. What's a DAG?
Great question. So a DAG is just your data pipeline in Airflow. The term comes from a mathematical concept, but you can just think of it as a data pipeline.
Sure. Okay. And I can see here, like, we have basically 2 of those 3 steps, right?
Exactly.
Raw and selected. So we need to add, I guess, the formatted newsletter.
Exactly. So we haven't added our load step here. So to do that, we can hop
button do
over.
I click?
You actually can't do this in the Airflow UI. People always ask that, can you modify your code? We'll look at, you can see the code in the Airflow UI, but you can't actually change it.
Okay.
So in Airflow, all of your data pipelines are written in Python. DAGs are defined as Python files, and then they go into a DAGs folder for your project. So you can see we have a create newsletter Python file here. In this case, we have chosen to define all of our assets for the ETL pipeline in one file. They actually each create their own DAG. That's how assets work. But because they're all logically connected in the same pipeline, we've defined them here.
But you can technically split it up and
you can split it up in any way you wanted. Airflow will figure all of it out as long as it knows which DAG to assign.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay. So we can see our raw Zen quotes asset here that has a daily schedule. We can see our selected quotes asset here, which has a schedule of the previous asset. So it runs when that one has completed. And then now we're going to add our load step.
This is a magic paste. Did it work?
Magic paste.
Python and indentations.
Always tricky. So in this case, and we're adding our formatted newsletter step. So this is just the Python code that is required to pull all of that data into, a file that is formatted and can be sent out via email later.
In this case, I see that you're storing it in object storage. I assume it's going to be Amazon S3, right, in this case?
Yes, exactly. So object storage is another concept within Airflow. It's a really great feature and allows you to be super flexible in how you define this. So in this particular case where I'm running locally here, you can use your local file storage. We very much hope that you're not doing that in production and that you are actually using a cloud-based object storage. So in this case, yes, S3.
Although localhost is my favorite website. So, okay, so we've added this. And again, what button do I need to press for this thing to show up?
Yeah, so I've saved this file. So that's all we need to do. Airflow is always scanning your DAGs folder for updates to your pipelines. So now if we go back to Airflow, we can see actually a couple of things have popped up here. So the first one is the formatted newsletter. So this is the task we just added for the load step in our pipeline. So this pipeline is now complete. Anytime that we run this either manually or it runs on its daily schedule, all of these steps will run and create everything we need to get the newsletter template in place. You can also see that it has added a couple of other steps to this graph. This is the next part of our pipeline. So again, it did this because nothing can run unless the ETL steps have completed, right? That always has to happen first. So we don't want to assign like a schedule to something of say, run at 9 a.m. when we have no idea when the ETL pipeline is going to finish. So this is the personalized newsletter step, which is the next pipeline in our use case here. And that has been added because it is scheduled to run when the ETL pipeline finishes.
So we're going to talk about that in a second. But as you can see here, the formatted newsletter, those 2 little boxes, those things were added right by that Python code. And because the personalized newsletter and the SQSQ asset existed in your code, but they weren't connected in some sort of way, that's why they showed up.
Exactly. So we will cover these in just a minute. They don't normally magically show up, but we have actually already written those pipelines in Python code, and they are already in our Airflow environment.
Basically, like the formatted newsletter would be just a non-personalized newsletter, just transformed. The Kenton quotes API, you should build an API. That would provide like a formatted newsletter, and that's it. And then that's where we go into the next part. Right? Before we move on to the next one, is there anything we missed here? So we saw the brand new UI. We saw the assets element. You taught me what DAGs are, which I think I understand what a DAG is. It's a pipeline. You define each of these assets within a Python file, and specifically it looks like a Python function, but it can be multiple functions, right? Can an asset be multiple Python functions, or is it always a single Python function?
It should be a single Python function, although you can build on top of them, and you can create multiple assets from functions, and they can reference each other. So basically, you don't have to pack it all into one Python function. They can call other functions and things like that. In fact, if you had a very complex implementation, we would recommend, like, if it's thousands of lines of Python code, it shouldn't all be one function.
Yeah, exactly. You should import it from...
Yes,
okay, good.
Exactly.
And it automatically picks it up as soon as you save your code, because Airflow just scans that specific DAG directory for any code changes. Awesome.
Exactly.
Are we ready for the generative AI magic?
I think so.
Let's talk about the Gen AI part here, specifically the personalization element of it, because that's what we talk about here. This is a big part of this whole thing. It has, changes that's just a format a newsletter to something special, to something using generative AI, Bedrock.
Yeah, exactly. This is a big aspect of it. You could get just a general newsletter every day, which is great, but maybe you want the weather for the place that you actually live. Or maybe you want a motivational quote based on something that you put in, or news that is based on a topic that you want to care about. So that's where the personalization comes in. And yes, we do that with generative AI, the topic du jour. So what we're doing here is using the formatted template that we have created with our ETL pipeline. We're then taking that, we're getting info from our users that they provide to us, say from a form on a website that they fill out based on their own information. And then we put that information into a prompt that we send to the LLM to give us the right output. So we're using Amazon Bedrock for this. And then we take what the prompt gives us back and put that into the newsletter format and send it out. So all of that is managed by Airflow.
Let's have a look at that wonderful, wonderful pipeline.
So we're back at our full pipeline, which includes our ETL step, but let's look more at the personalized newsletter DAG. So we've implemented this in a task-oriented DAG. So instead of using assets like we did in the last one, we're using traditional Airflow tasks for this. So what we've got here is we get the user info. We send that to the Gen AI prompt, get the output, and then create the newsletter.
Okay, nice.
Airflow UI, lots of things in the overview that are great about the Airflow 3 UI that show us very quickly what's going wrong for the runs that have failed. So much faster debugging in Airflow 3, which is great. But we've hopefully moved on from that point in our development. So let's look at the final code here. So still everything is written in a Python file. We are still using the object storage system to manage all of the information at different parts. But important part of this for the Gen AI aspect. So here's where we're defining our system prompt. So again, we are going to tell the LLMs that you are your favorite sci-fi character and to give us quotes back based on that.
And that information, so like I see you have here placeholders, and you're gonna add those things within these placeholders. Is this coming in from like the get user info? Is that from that?
Yes, exactly. So we're assuming that our users enter their information into like a form on a website, so that we take that from them and use it to fill out the prompt, and that's how it's personalized. So I'll scroll through the first couple of tasks here pretty quickly. Some of this is to get the weather information based on the location that the user provides. So pretty standard, get lat long. We'll come back to the SQS part. This is where we define generally how the DAG runs. And so we're grabbing the user info, again, just from what they input. And then here is where we create the personalized quote. So this is kind of the meaty part of this pipeline. And again, we're using Amazon Bedrock to get the LLM, manage all of that and get the response back. So to do that, we actually use what's called a provider in Airflow. So Airflow obviously has to connect to many, many, many other systems in order to run as an orchestration service. It does this through a concept called providers, which are separate Python packages from the core of Airflow designed to interact with some external system. So they give you just basically pre-built Python functions so that you don't have to write everything yourself.
I like that. So, so basically, this is, in this case, at least looking at the code, this, in essence, instantiates the AWS SDK here.
So that you don't have to figure out how to, create the client and the connection and all of that good stuff. The Amazon provider is great. It's super built out, as you might imagine. So that's what we're doing here is using the AWS hook. So that just gets our connection into AWS and specifically the Bedrock runtime. You'll notice that we're passing in it's called AWS Con ID or a connection. So behind the scenes, we have defined this AWS default with our credentials needed to authenticate. So that's how Airflow can actually get into your AWS instance.
And that's all configured on the Airflow part, right?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So we create the session in the region we need and then connect directly to Bedrock.
Nice. See a bunch of variables here, user ID name, motivation. So all those things are going to be passing on into the actual prompt.
Yes. This is all just to format the prompt specifically to work with the model that we've chosen to use through Bedrock.
Nice.
Exactly.
Okay. Beautiful.
So if you were to use like a different model or something like that, you could do that. You just might need to change some of these things.
Got it. Yep.
And then we define where we're going to store this when we're done. And then here is where we actually put all of that together into the formatted prompt. And then we build the body of the request for the model. So again, this is all very specific to the model that we have chosen, which in our case here, we're using Anthropic Claude version 2. So this stuff is all easily changeable if you want to use a different model or something like that.
Shout out to Bedrock. You can choose any model you want.
It was actually a little bit of decision paralysis when I went to implement this because there were so many options. I was like, ooh, which option do I want? So then we generate a response. And then that's when we are going to put that into our the thing that the function returns. And that's going to be used in our newsletter.
And you're also getting the weather. Now, the weather info is not personalized. It's just like potentially personalized to your location. It doesn't use any AI to do any of that stuff. But and then again, combine information. I see this little task called combine information. This kind of just bunches it up. Does it run the format newsletter again, or does it put it back? Like, how would this look in the pipeline here?
No. So what this will do is once you've run the ETL part of the pipeline to create that formatted template, that is a file that is saved in your objects storage. So hopefully S3. And then this pipeline is going to retrieve that file. So it expects that file to exist, which is why this pipeline is scheduled for when that other one has already run. So that then it just takes that file and updates it, creates a new file with the personalized info.
That's pretty good because like you could have personalized and not personalized newsletters existing at the same time.
Exactly. So we assume that lots of users, maybe they don't care. Maybe they don't have a favorite sci-fi character they want quotes in their newsletter from. They just want the generic one. And that's totally fine. We always have that and can send it out.
Since we're working with APIs can fail, right? Does this have some sort of a retry mechanism? I assume yes.
This is actually a great question. So there are a couple of things I would highlight here, especially for the weather API that we are using. It is, I will say, fussy.
Flaky.
It is flaky. And it's very limited in terms of how many parallel requests you can make. So a couple of things that we've done for that. One is, yes, you can absolutely retry tasks within Airflow. This is very bread and butter Airflow functionality. You can define that for your whole DAG, or sometimes if you need a particular task that you know might need to try a couple more times, you can overwrite that for the task. So that's what we've done here in this get weather info. You can see here I have retries is 4. So I'm assuming this guy might need to run a couple more times. The other thing that I've set up here is a pool and called Weather API. So pools are a concept within Airflow where Airflow has a ton of configuration for how many tasks you want to run in parallel. You can define that on a DAG level. So you can say for this DAG, I only want this many tasks. For my whole Airflow instance, I want this many tasks. You have total control over how all of that works so that you can scale, properly and manage it. Pools allow you to do that for like a set of tasks that maybe say you have 5 pipelines that all access an API that you know is rate limited and you don't want them to interact with each other. So you say, okay, only 2 of these can run at the same time. So I still want to trigger all of them, but some of them might need to wait until the others have finished. So that's what I've done here with the pool, where I've created a pool. Actually, in this case, I've done just 1 slot. So we're really not hitting the rate limit. But you can manage that in whatever way you want. And that's all very easily configurable. You can do that here in the Airflow UI through pools, or, obviously you can create a pool with like the API or programmatically or something like that.
Amazing. Okay. I have 2 last questions. Number 1, I noticed, and you told me this through our conversations, that the feature of Airflow 3 that we haven't mentioned is called DAG versioning. Tell me what is DAG versioning and why wasn't it there?
Great question. So this is a feature that has been really highly requested in Airflow. It's one of the big headline features in Airflow 3. DAG versioning is kind of what you would think. So if you think about like storing your DAG code in a Python file that hopefully you are storing in like a version control system like Git or something like that, so that you can go back and say, here is how this file has changed over time. A concept like that, but within the Airflow UI, so how has this DAG changed over time, previously did not exist, which presented some challenges because pipelines change over time. Absolutely. And if you were to say do something like remove a task or add a new task, it's just gone. If you remove a task, Airflow doesn't remember that it exists. So you had no history in terms of seeing how that DAG had changed, and you couldn't revert back or like rerun an old version. Now in Airflow 3, you can.
We can go back.
So this pipeline, I think, is a good example of this, where if I look at the options here, you'll actually see we're on version 4. So you see I can go back to these versions. I think in this case, the structure of my pipeline hasn't changed much, but you would see that here in the graph, here reverting. So yes, this is a really cool feature in Airflow 3 that everybody's really excited about. I think to your question of why didn't it exist before, DAG versioning turns out is one of those things that was actually very much not trivial to implement on the back end.
Like your newsletter, right?
Yes, exactly. These things always sound really easy in theory, and then they're not when you get into it. But yes, it was prioritized again because of community feedback in the open source project, which is great. And we're really excited about it.
We saw there, Amazon SQS. I saw that we did something. Just kind of tell me what that SQS does in this case, because I love SQS. It's the first AWS service.
I really did not know
Amazon
that.
SQS.
Wow.
Shout out to Amazon SQS, 2006. 2006, I think.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, there you go.
That is awesome. Yes, so great question. So we talked earlier about this whole pipeline and how these are tied together via their schedules. So within Airflow, you have lots of options for when you can actually run these DAGs. So you can put them on a time-based schedule using cron. So daily at midnight, you can schedule them on assets. So when this thing has finished. But sometimes you need to schedule based on something happening in an external system. Not within your Airflow instance, but say a file lands somewhere, a message shows up in SQS. In our particular use case, some users might want to just get a daily newsletter with their info. They put their information for the personalization in on our website and send it, and then we take that on the back end and do our thing. We also want to provide a service where users can get a newsletter on demand. So I want it right now. I don't want to wait until tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. or whatever. So in that case, we would say have a form on our website that you can still input your personal information, but you can say send on demand.
On demand.
This in Airflow 3 is called event-driven scheduling. And right now it is available with SQS. So meaning you can set up your Airflow instance to watch an SQS queue. And when a message arrives, it will trigger your DAGs.
Okay, that's a weird approach to newsletters. I want my newsletter now. But sure. So we need to move this to production right now, right?
Well, I think first we should make sure that it works.
No. Straight to prod. Okay,
straight to prod on a Friday afternoon, right?
Remember, kids, always commit to main. So,
exactly.
So let's see. Okay, let's actually see if this works. How do you trigger this?
Yeah, so Again, this will run daily on a schedule using all of the user input that has been given to us from the website. But I want to highlight the event-driven scheduling aspect of it. So that means that when we receive a message in SQS, which on the back end is going to happen from a thing on our website. Here I'm just going to show actually inputting it. That should trigger this pipeline based on the information that we put in. So if we hop over to SQS here, we can enter a message here. So I'm going to send this to you, Darko.
Yeah.
In Seattle.
Okay.
We're going to put in your favorite sci-fi character for your motivational quotes. Is Spock okay?
Spock is always okay.
All right. We love that.
Okay.
So then all we have to do is send this message.
Okay.
And if we hop back over, we see it's still available. Airflow is going to have to pull for this, but
we should see
in a moment here, we should see this pipeline kick off.
So Airflow is basically like, it's I guess pulling this SQS queue, and then as soon as the message arrives, it picks it up and does something with it, right? So
exactly, it's done via this concept of an asset watcher, is what they're called on the back end. So again, related to this concept of assets, and exactly as you said, it can work in a pull mechanism like this, where it's watching for that SQS queue for something to show up. And actually now we see it running. So it has consumed that message. The pipeline should run. We can even click in here and kind of watch everything happen. So all of our tasks are successful. This means it has created the personalized newsletter for you. And
love it.
if we look in our local file system, we should see that. Here it is.
Look at that.
Here's your newsletter for Darko.
If you venture outside now in Seattle, you'll find the temperature to be 16.6 degrees Celsius, as it should be. Nice. Okay. As you surf the probabilistic waves of existence today, oh my God.
We're very meta in this newsletter.
I love it. Okay, good. I love it. Okay, nice. And this was all kind of like, again, we got the Zen quote, we got a personalized suggestion. I see Spock. We got the weather based on my location.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're kind of ready for this thing to go into the yonder. Have we missed something? I think there was a feature we haven't talked about, something called Backfills.
Yeah, great question. So we've just talked about how you might want to run this and that it could be event-driven, but that we also have an aspect of it that's just creating the regular newsletter every day. Let's say we deploy this to prod, which we're going to do in a moment, so it's not running on my local computer. And at the point we deploy it, it hasn't run for the past couple of days. And this is a problem because people need their news.
Of course.
Airflow 3 has a great solution to this, which is backfills. So if we hop back over to, say, our formatted newsletter task. Backfills are just the concept of rerunning tags for a previous state to process historical data. So that could be because past runs have failed or because they just simply didn't happen. So it's really common if you're developing a new pipeline that you might have to process old data or, anything that has failed. So in Airflow 3, this is super straightforward. All you have to do is click here on Run Backfill. And choose
you can pick a date,
the date range. So let's say for the past couple of days, we're going to rerun this. And you can choose whether you want missing and errored runs. And again, you can control how many of them are going to run at the same time. So if you were to say, I have to backfill data for the last 3 years, you don't have to run 3 years for the pipelines at the same time, take down your Airflow instance, right? So you can control that there.
So, now how do we take this thing and put it into the cloud?
Great question. You should not run this locally forever. Airflow has a ton of different ways that you can run it in production. You should be running it in the cloud. So lots of people deploy Airflow on AWS themselves, rolling their own. Often Kubernetes is the most common way to do it. So using like an EKS or something like that. But if you want to run Airflow 3 today, Astra, which is Astronomer's managed service, is the only way to do that.
Exactly.
So we would deploy this to Astra, which you can run on AWS.
And I know all of your code sits in a repo, right? Like, and would you just kind of attach this thing to a repo? Like, what's the complicated? How would then how would they take the
Yeah.
code? The code is in the description, by the way. How would they take your code and deploy it to Astro? For example?
Yeah, great question. So it's actually quite straightforward. So I can hop over to Astro here. This is the Astro UI, and what I'm looking at here is my deployments. So each one of these is an Airflow instance, like we've been looking at. This personalized newsletter is the one I've created in prod for what we just talked about.
Okay.
You can see that it's running in
AWS.
which is great. If I open Airflow, it's going to take me to the Airflow UI, which should look like just like we have been doing. Obviously, we haven't deployed yet, so nothing is running here.
Right.
But in terms of actually getting our code up onto here, you can deploy using the Astro CLI, which is more the manual process for doing so. Typically, what you would actually want to do in production is use your CI/CD process. So when you push all of this new code to GitHub, whatever CI/CD tool of your choice is going to take care of sending it to the Airflow instance on Astro.
This is not only for newsletters, right? Right. I assume Airbnb didn't build a newsletter service.
No.
So what else people use Airflow for?
Yeah, great question. Almost everything. So if you need to move data around, if you need to schedule it, if you need to orchestrate something, Airflow is great for that use case. So it really runs the gamut of, we see Airflow used in healthcare companies. We see it used in large media companies. We see it used in nonprofits, like anything you need to do with the Airflow. And in terms of use cases, we've talked a lot about ETL today. We've talked about Gen AI workflows. Those are just two of the examples. We see people using Airflow for ML ops or for managing infrastructure. Anything that you need to automate and schedule, Airflow is good for.
Because Airflow is not just ETL, it's a whole orchestration engine. So
exactly.
Wonderful. Written in Python, by the way. Awesome. I like it. Okay, cool. So, well, thank you so much. I think we have your newsletter service running and we're ready to go. Folks, if you want to go and try this out, there's going to be a link in the description that has all the code. You can literally deploy this right now on the best website, localhost, or you can deploy it on AWS, or you can deploy it on Astro. Go check it out. Tell us in the comments, have you built a pipeline? Have you orchestrated things? And why Python? And anyway, Kenton, thank you so much. I think you and I need to go take this monitor, because we're at AWS right now. We need to go take it to the cloud and deploy it to the cloud manually. We're gonna plug in our computers and just leave it. It's just around the corner here. So
sounds great. Let's do it.
Come on, bye.